Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where, well, it's my weekend reading report. It's the weekend again, Roger. This week has gone on forever, but finally it's the weekend, and it's time for my weekend reading report. And I've got some things to report this week, so, there you go. Some stuff to talk about this week here at Stately Vaughan Manor. So, I finished a book this week, and the book I finished is this book. This is Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew Jones, published by Banned Books. This came out on the 1st of this month, so this is available now. It was kindly sent to me by Banned Books. Howard Andrew Jones actually had them sent it to me, I think, which was very kind. And so I finished this book, and it's really good. It's a really good book. And I have a lot of thoughts on this book. So I'm going to be doing a video just on this book. I meant to do that this past week, but it ran out of time. So I didn't actually have time to film that. So I'm hoping to film that coming up soon. So look for that. Lord of a Shattered Land, sword and sorcery book. A really, really good one. So there's that. I do recommend it. So, you can buy it if you like sword and sorcery. Personally, sword and sorcery is my favorite subgenre, so I was happy to get this, and I was happy it was good because when people send you books, you're always kind of like, what if it sucks? But this one didn't suck. This one was actually really good. So, yeah, I'll talk about this. Hopefully, I'll have a video up this week about this book, Lord of a Shattered Land by Howard Andrew Jones. It was good. So, that was that book. And then I moved on to Blackwater. Blackwater by Michael McDowell. Now, I was going to move on to this book for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club first. This is the August pick for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, Gladiator by Philip Wiley, which was a story about a guy with superpowers published in 1930 that probably influenced the creation of Superman. I was going to move on to that, but I'm like, well, this is gigantic. I'm just going to move on to this first. I've got all month, after all. And so this is for Garb August, and it doesn't look very Garb Augusty, but it is a paperback from hell. It's a hardback, but it was originally published in 6 volumes. It was a serialized novel, published in 6 volumes. And it's really, really good. I mean, I read almost, how many pages have I ever read this week? I read 450 pages of this, which is a lot for me in a week. It's one of the reasons I didn't have time to make more videos. It's because I was reading Blackwater. Man, this book is good. About a rich Southern family, and one of the guys in this family, the young son of the family, Oscar, ends up marrying a river monster. A little unusual. Well, she doesn't look like a river monster, because she shapeshifts into a human being. Now, the first week of Garb August, I thought, I'm not going to follow any of the rules for Garb August, and I'll just move right on to Paperbacks from Hell. But guess what? Roger, this actually counts as a shifter romance because, Oscar and Eleanor, I mean, true, it's not the most romantic relationship in the world, but Eleanor, she does shift. I mean, she shifts into this. But hey, it's a shifter romance, so it qualifies for the first week of Garb August, Sure it does, but this is really good. This is Michael McDowell's epic, and most people that like this writer consider this his masterpiece of horror, and I can see why. It's really an interesting book so far. It's a family saga. It's the saga of the Caskies in Perdido, which is right by the Perdido River, where the river monster came from. Eleanor, the river monster, who shapeshifts into a human being to marry Oscar. So she marries into this rich family. And her goal is to get Oscar rich. Why? I don't know. Maybe she didn't like being a river monster. You know, so far, she's very mysterious. We haven't learned much about, you know, what she really... I mean, we know she's a horrific monster who does terrible things. I mean, straight up eats people, children. I mean, it's grim. The horror stuff in here is grim, but the horror just shows up sporadically. You actually forget for chapters sometimes that you're reading a horror novel, but it doesn't matter because it's all so engrossing. It's really, really good. And I'm actually going to be making a video on this book because it deserves it. It's that good so far. Like I said, I'm only that far. But I probably will finish this week. I'm going to really read a lot of this this weekend. My weekend is Sunday, Monday. So Sunday and Monday, I'm going to be reading a lot of Blackwater. I'm loving it. It's great. So yeah, Blackwater. And I forget which number for the 500 book challenge this is. Is it 65? I think it might be 65. I'll put the number down here if I remember. Now, this originally was published in 6 parts, so I could count it as 6 books. But when I was reading this, you know, they have it's in the different parts. Let's see if I can get to the, like, for example, this is part 2, the levy. But when you go to part 2, it starts off with chapter 13. So this really feels like one book to me. It feels like one novel that's just been serialized. And if I were to read, you know, a Charles Dickens novel that was serialized, I'm not going to count the different parts. I'm just going to count it all as one book. And I think that's how I'm going to count this. I know CriminOlly, I believe, counted this as 6 books. And I'm not saying he was wrong to do so. But for me, it feels like one book. So I'm going to count it as one book because, you know, I'm an idiot. So this is really good, Blackwater. I'm reading that. And I actually think I'm going to put a little bit more time in on other Garb stuff before I get to this. I want to read at least one more book after Blackwater before I get to this, which would be The Rats. The Rats. Everybody, you know, I did that video about the paperbacks from hell, which paperbacks from hell I should read. And everybody pretty much says I need to read The Rats. I did read this in the early 90s. But I don't really remember it that well. Because, it's been a year or two since the 90s. So, yeah, I'm reading The Rats next because everybody says I need to read that. So, I'm going to read it. So, yeah, that's the next thing I'm going to read. Otherwise, it's mostly going to be paperbacks from hell and novelizations this month. Although, I might fit this in for the Edgar Rice Burroughs deep dive, even though, of course, Tarzan, this is Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar, which is the next book in my deep dive of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Even though, of course, Tarzan is not trash. No, it's not trash. No. I mean, every book in the Tarzan series is a masterpiece of literature, including this one. So, I'll just sneak this in, even though it's not trashy at all. I might sneak that in. Anyway, I did read other things. I read this for my Astounding science fiction project. Every month I'll read an issue of Astounding from 1951. And this is from July 1951. So this is for July. I read this. Astounding science fiction. It's really cool, even though as I was reading it, the cover started coming off. How cheap. It's only 70 years old. I mean, it's a little over. I'm going to write the editors. I can't believe the quality issues we've got going on here. Anyway, great cover. I really enjoyed the cover to this one. And it had some good stories in this. What stories were in this volume? Title page right there. We had The End of the Line by James H. Smits. The Greatest Invention by Jack Williamson. That was pretty good. Then we had Feedback by Catherine McLean. Windfall by Catherine C. DeCamp, The Error of Their Ways by Gordon R. Dixon, and For Those Who Follow After by Dean McLaughlin. So good stuff here, including an interesting article by L. Sprague DeCamp, The Care and Feeding of Mad Scientists. So this was cool. On the back we have an advertisement for the Shadow radio show, which was still hanging in there in 1951. Wouldn't be hanging in there for too much longer. A few more years I think it had before it vanished for good. But at least it's not a Dianetics ad. So yeah, there's that. I read that. Astounding, July 1951. I also read my comic book stuff. I finished Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, 80 Years of the King of the Seven Seas. This was an anthology volume about Aquaman, since I'm all about reading Aquaman now, because I've never read much Aquaman in my life. And it's pretty good, and there's Superman makes an appearance. Why are there so many sirens going on? I suspect Roger left some bodies in an inconvenient place. What are you doing out there, Roger? Anyway, we'll just have to deal. But yeah, Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas. Finished this. It was excellent. Also, I've been reading Batman, the Silver Age Omnibus. It seems like I've been reading this a while because basically I'm reading 1 or 2 stories a day. And it takes a while to finish an omnibus of this size when you read 1 or 2 stories a day. So there's that. And it's really cool. I might do a whole video just on this because there's some stuff in here, man, that's really interesting. Also reading Golden Age Superman Volume 2. This is a lot of fun. Really enjoying this one. I love these Golden Age stories for some reason. I didn't think I would, but I'm really enjoying them. Superman actually has a pretty good sense of humor back in the 1940s. Which he seems to have lost a little bit over time. But yeah, these were fun. These are fun. So I'll be reading this one for a while too. Because again, reading 1 story a day. At that rate, it'll take a while. Now, I need to read, at some point this weekend, Prez. It's Prez. Because for Epic Comic Book Wednesday coming up, it's going to be Prez. Prez. The first teen president. So this lasted in the mid-70s. This came out. There's Prez and Eagle Free, the vice president there. Prez was the first teen president. I don't know if you remember Prez when he became president. For most of the 70s, actually, Prez was president. You know, the first teenage president. And there were only like 4 issues, although I think there were 4 issues. Although this wonderful volume has the issue that would have been published, but wasn't. It was suppressed by, you know, his enemies, I think. And then, you know, other stuff like Supergirl in her hot pants. Superman wore hot pants back at this time. Which is, you know, it's a solid choice. So she met up with Prez. Supergirl did. And then there was a Sandman issue with Prez, you know. And then there was a special well, hold on. I think it was Garth Ennis. Let me see if I could find it. Is this it? Where does one Prez story end and the other begin? Here we go. Here it is. Yeah, it was Ed Brubaker. That's who I was thinking of. Ed Brubaker wrote this story of Prez smells like teen president. Because, you know, some people were nostalgic for Prez and wanted to, you know, revisit this somewhat trashy character from the 70s. So I'll be reading this, and, you know, somewhere Steve Donoghue is screaming. So if Steve Donoghue does not join me again this week, I perfectly understand because, you know, Prez, he might feign illness or something rather than suffer through 4 or 5 issues of Prez. So there's that. That's my comic book reading. I did get some things in the mail. David Wiley, the wonderful David Wiley, the amazing David Wiley, sent me some books. And the first one is really cool. This one is Bloch and Bradbury. So this is an anthology of Robert Bloch and Ray Bradbury. And so together they have a bunch of stories in this volume. And that's way cool. I was very jealous when he held this up in his original video where he talked about this. And so I commented on David's video and I was like, man, I'm really jealous of that. So he sent it to me, which was very kind. So he sent me that. Then he sent me this big fat Spider-Man paperback. It's like 2 Spider-Man novels. The Sinister Six combo for Garb August. And I've never read a Spider-Man novel ever. So that was cool. He sent that to me. And he also sent me this, The Death and Life of Superman, a novel by Roger Stern, which is based on, of course, the death and return of Superman, which was such a big deal in the 90s. And I never read this book. I of course, read all those comics, but I never read the novel. So that's interesting. That's kind of a cool thing to get. So thank you, David. I actually sent David a package. Was it a couple weeks ago? I sent David a package. And I have to check with David to see if his address changed or if there's any... I don't think it did. Or if there was anything that went on. Because when I got home from work today, I came home and on the porch of Stately Vaughan Manor was the package I sent to David. And I'm like, why is that back here? And it looked like it had been kicked around by a football team. And I'm like, so I picked up the package, I brought it in, and I wasn't sure it was the package that I had sent to David because it was just so obliterated. But I opened it up, and sure enough, those were the books I'd sent to David. And I was like, what happened? There's no explanation for this. So I tracked it because I had the tracking number. And according to the post office, my package will be late, but it's still being sent. It's still on its way. It's still on its way. It'll just be late. It's going to be really late, apparently, because it ended up on my porch. So I will have to find out. I know, I'm upset about it too. Rhonda can't stand even the thought that David's package didn't arrive. And now Zorro doesn't like it either. I agree, guys. I know. Zorro, you're the well-behaved one. Will you go over and tell Rhonda to be good? Will you tell Rhonda to be good, little one? Yes, I know she was upset that David Wiley's package didn't make it in the mail. I'm upset too. But you know, that's life. We'll try to resend it, okay? All right, you go talk to Rhonda over there. Okay, and now I'm covered in dog hair. So, that is the sad story of the package that I sent to David that never showed up to David's house. And the wonderful books that David sent me. I really appreciate that. I will resend your package after contacting you and making sure you didn't actually move, which I don't think you did. But, you know, I miss things. I miss things. One package that was really well packaged came from Steve Donoghue. Yeah, the great Steve Donoghue actually sent me a package from the Brattle, the world-famous Brattle bookstore that he's always talking about. Will you stop it over there? Anyway, Steve Donoghue sent me this. This is Tarzan, the Centennial Celebration. The stories, the movies, the art. And look at that cover. That's fantastic. The fantastic Neil Adams cover. It's so cool. And this is just full of... Look at Tarzan riding those dolphins. Who knew Tarzan could, double as Aquaman? And this I love because the first time I read The Return of Tarzan, it had this cover on it. The first time I read The Return of Tarzan, the paperback had this cover. So this is just full of great, great artwork. It talks about every single Tarzan novel, and there were 24 of them, I think. Yeah, we have Tarzan and the Castaways. This great, beautiful Boris cover. I mean, can you even do a Tarzan cover better than this? That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I especially like that cover. Can't imagine why. And it has comic strips, it's got It's got the movies. It talks about the movies in here. This is incredible. This is an incredible book. I'm shocked I didn't have this already, but man, am I glad to get it. I was just sitting around for like hours this week just looking at this book because I'm a huge Tarzan fan, and thank you so much, Steve, for sending this to me. That was very thoughtful. I very much appreciated. This will be in a place of honor here at Stately Vaughn Manor. So I got that. I did buy a couple things. I did buy a book from a booktuber. Now, books by booktubers are exempt from the 500 book challenge, where I can't buy any new books until I read 500 I already own. You have to be able to support your fellow booktubers. And I got a book that was written by Roy from the channel Roy Cleans Anything. Actually, it's from Roy Reads Anything. But this is all... See, this is the thing. Roy is a co-host for Garb, the great booktube event Garb about reading trash. And here is Roy on the cover, cleaning up trash. This is Performance Cleaner, Zap Club, 1984 to 1986. So this is young Roy there, cleaning up the Zap Club, I guess. I haven't read this yet. But I will read it very soon, because you have to read this. This is made to order for Garb, right? I mean, it's from a Garb co-host cleaning up in a very performance art way. So yeah, it's a wee little thing. It's a tiny little memoir. So there you go. Roy Reads Anything and Roy Cleans Anything as well. So there's that. And I did get a couple other things. From EC Comics, I got 2 volumes of Shock Suspense. So EC Comics, the greatest comic book company that ever existed, and published some of the greatest comic books that have ever been published. Shock suspense stories. Now, they're known for their horror comic books. This is more of a crime / suspense / horror comic book, because this had the most horrifying stories that EC ever did. I mean, these are hard-hitting, terrifying stories, and they're all about prejudice and crime and all kinds of stuff that were plaguing the 1950s. You know, when I was growing up, people used to look fondly back on the 1950s as if it was some innocent time. No, it wasn't. As some of these stories make clear, because, you know, a lot of these were very progressive. EC Comics was a very progressive comic book company, actually. And they would actually talk to you about racism and sexism and sexual assault and all kinds of really hardcore things, you know. And some of these stories, man, they really still pack a punch today. So this is volume 1. And this is volume 2. I mean, look at that cover. This guy is in a bad situation. And this was a great story where this criminal was handcuffed to this corpse and has to make his way through the desert. And don't those vultures just want to eat him? It's awesome. It's awesome. And, of course, the artwork was amazing. Spoiler alert. So, awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. One more thing I got, which I'm really happy to have gotten. You know, I'm reading Batman and Superman every day for my World's Finest Challenge. And so I managed to get a volume of Neil Adams' Batman. You would be surprised how hard it is to get Neil Adams' Batman nowadays, because DC's reprint program sucks ass. And so they haven't reprinted the Neil Adams Omnibus, which they did come out with. And it's super expensive now. They also had a 3-volume hardcover set. This is volume 2, which for some reason is easier to get than volume 1 or 3. Both of those volumes seem to be rather scarce and stupid expensive. But I got this one, which is cool because Neil Adams was a great Batman artist. I mean, he was phenomenal and very, very influential. True, the Batmobile in this era kind of sucked. It looked just like an ordinary car with a bat head on the hood. And that's not very fun. But still, excellent, excellent artwork in here. Great stories. So, and I haven't read most of these. Most of these came out in 1968 and 69, I think. So before I was born. And so I've only read reprints of these wherever they've shown up. And so there are a lot of Neal Adams stories I have not read yet. So yeah, I'll be able to read some more of them right here. And I think that's everything. I think. Roger, do you have anything to add? Roger does not. Roger says that he did not leave a bunch of bodies lying around for the police to find out in the street. I'm hoping that's correct. I'm hoping that's correct, Roger. He can cause some trouble. Okay, guys. I guess that's everything. I will catch you next time.